you weren't done with NASA though. They called you back, correct? So explain that process.
Well, not specifically me.
Okay.
What happened was that in January of 2011, January, they had a contract that was in dispute for quite a while. I don't know how long it was. When they have these contracts up for bid, whoever loses, most of the time they appeal it, right?
Yeah.
Well, it changed hands when they didn't expect it to. So it changed hands in January, and MILA's last track was supposed to be in July. Barring any
July 2011.
Buying any holds.
Okay.
6 months to go. So they were already down to a skeleton crew.
Oh, wow.
So when 3 people decided not to go with the new company, they retired. And they needed those 3 people replaced. So they needed people that had done that before. Not just an electronics guy. They needed a tracker.
Yeah.
They needed 3 of them. And they got 2 of them out of retirement. There was 2 Winnebagos in the parking lot for the next 6 months, because that's what they were doing. They were traveling around in their Winnebago retired. But they had both worked in the GSFC system, right? Oh, I said that wrong.
You're good.
GSFC, Goddard Space Flight Center, that's right. STADAN tracking, they had already done that. So I was one of the ones. A friend of mine, I knew he worked there.
Huh.
He called me and he says, "Hey, we need somebody. We already talked to him about you. You can have it if you want it." I said, "Sure, I want it." Because the guys in the USB, I had worked with them for 15 years. The same guys. So they knew I could do it. So there it was. It was hard to find people.
Yeah.
Right?
So you were there for the last 2 launches.
Yes.
And for people in the audience, the shuttle program carried on from 1981 to 2011. And 2011 was the last shuttle launch, the Space Shuttle Atlantis.
Right.
It was a night mission, military mission. And that's crazy that you worked on the last 2. What was the one before Atlantis, the last one?
I don't remember.
Okay, but you were called in for both of those. Well,
I went back in January.
Okay, in January.
Or right at the beginning of February.
Okay.
Just before the outgoing company left. So I worked for the outgoing company for a week.
Oh, wow.
And then the incoming company was LJT and Associates. I worked for them for the next 6 months, basically.
Okay.
Doing exactly the same thing. Yeah. What they had done is they had they called it laying computers over the top of the equipment. So the equipment looked fine. It looked the same as it used to, except that it was really advanced when it was built by Harris RF Communications. They could control almost all of it from one single spot. But what they found out is it was designed so that it could do it all by itself. But like so many things they designed to do all by themselves, they find out we need some human interaction here.
Yeah,
First of all, they have to fix it if it breaks. Second of all, there's nothing that beats a guy standing in front of a radio. Even though the guy down there can see if it's locked or if it's not locked. Relocking things from a remote place, they just wouldn't do it. So they still needed people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And so that's crazy. So how did it feel like being back there? Like how long have you not been back? Or what was the time span where you haven't been back there? Then you started working there again, and did it just feel the same? And like it felt amazing again that you could just hear all the launches and see the launch.
23 years.
23 years.
That's
wow.
how long it had been.
Wow. That'd be neat.
And there was a third as many people. It was not that
because
many
of the
people.
computers.
But in my section, the section I went back to, out of 15 people or so that were in the section, 10 of them or something like that were there when I left.
Wow.
So they never left.
Holy cow.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact count. It may have been less than that.
Yeah.
But when I walked in the room, I could have been blindfolded and pointed out 3 or 4 people by their voices.
That's wild.
Yeah.
They're just still there.
Yeah. Still there.
And you had that option, but you wanted to be more adventurous.
Oh,
But
yeah. I could have stayed there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool. So what you said too, I really with the whole AI and how now they're talking about AI taking over the world and computers and stuff, you still just need that human touch. And the fact that they required it for the last last 2 shuttle launches, I think is amazing, and that the computers just couldn't hold up to what they intended it because and they needed you, and specifically people that worked with that system before. I think that's very interesting to really look into, because people in just career fields in general that get paid the most, they call it the 10,000 hours of mastery of a skill, and I mean, and from your time is just like, you do this thing. Now I think a lot of what I've had problems with, and a lot of people my age, we don't just stick to one thing. And it's causing an imbalance in our own lives where we are not making enough money to support our own families and income and stuff like that. But it's just impressive that you did that for so long and early on, and then you took your skills and you traveled the world with them. And that's just amazing. And you got to just do so many cool things with all that. And
I've been blessed. I've just had what people would say are very unique jobs.
Yeah.
Very unique.
Yeah.
Jobs, yeah.
And all this started though from being 17 years old, starting as a janitor, quote unquote, and just going in. And
during my 15 years there at MILA, I would meet people downtown 5 years later, 10 years later from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, you say, hey, how you doing? Yeah, fine. Where do you work? Kennedy Space Center. Oh, me too. So where do you work? MILA? Where? Never heard of it. And I say, okay. So when you come in the NASA Causeway, and they tell you the first thing on the right is the visitor center with all the rockets and all that, but it's really not, because a mile before that, there's this road that goes that way down into nowhere. Mm-hmm. They say, oh, down with all the antennas. I say, yeah, that's where I work. So I met people like that all the time.
Yeah.
I had friends that did nothing but TPS, thermal tile protection.
Okay.
Thermal protection system. That's all they did. They never got a college degree.
Wow. They did.
They don't teach you TPS in college.
Yeah.
There's nobody else can teach you.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
That's
it's
what blows
such a
me.
unique job.
Yeah.
And they didn't want you to have any preconceived ideas about how you do it. They're going to tell you exactly how to do it.
Yeah.
And they're going to have 3 people checking behind you to make sure you did it the right way.
Yeah.
I mean, human spaceflight, they go to great lengths on everything. I mean, if you're doing a test, a simulated launch test, and something doesn't go the way it went yesterday, it all gets written down, and teams look at why.
Yeah.
They have to know why.
Every detail.
Everything. If this was different than yesterday, then we're going to find out why it was different than yesterday.
Huh.
So everything, they go to great lengths. Yeah.
Yeah. That was wild. And the crazy part from your story too, that with all that, and like how my age group and with NASA requires degrees now, for almost everything, it seems. And it's so interesting that you talk about that, because I just think of all the little jobs that they're going to have to fill, that if you have a degree, but everything you learn in school, they're just going to have to teach you something totally different, and none of that's going to matter. Just even the guys on the front end of building the SLS rocket and anything else that they're trying to do to go back to the moon and stuff. I mean, I don't know. They don't talk about that and what they're doing about that and who are building the rockets. Usually it's the engineers and the technicians, and they all require a degree. But they're having a hard time with my age group and millennials, and even some people just a little older, sticking to the job long enough to work out the kinks and work out the details and the testing.
Yeah,
and I think that's another problem with how it's being prolonged. Some of the projects being pushed, rescheduled way later than what they intended.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah. something interesting that came up before we started was my roommate's girlfriend had a box from another friend who bought this house, and it was a house that a NASA engineer or somebody that worked at NASA had, and they had a bunch of pictures. And you said that you had all these pretty much the same thing. They just explained NASA handed those out to every employee.
Well, yeah, my father was, he started as a technician, but he moved all the way up as far as you could go. So he was the manager of operations.
Yeah.
So anytime you were involved, MILA was involved in any kind of a launch or mission of any kind, they were sent packets. You know, it's what you got. Didn't matter if you were a janitor or if you were an engineer. Yeah. Everybody got the same packets. So they would send them to my dad. They'd send him 200. Well, if the count was 175 at MILA, they didn't want him back.
Yeah.
He just built up all this stuff that was left over. So I got a lot of that.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
And so this guy had a lot of stuff too, and I found some things when I was looking just before I had Joe come over here and we do this podcast. I'm like, wait, that's MILA right there. And can you explain?
That is MILA, yes.
Yeah.
So this is looking from the south end. You're only seeing just one little corner of the building right here. But even just looking at that, can you see it?
No, you can't see it.
You gotta point it this way.
And we're almost at the hour mark.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is an S-band 30-foot dish.
Here, try to have your mic.
This is an S-band 30-foot dish right here. Underneath that is a shack they call the PA shack, power amplifier shack. Sits right there. This antenna is actually big enough that you can climb up into the little ball there. It's called the Y-axis. You can go climb up in it. The Y wheelhouse, they call it. So you can see the other antennas. There was antennas everywhere. They used to call us the antenna farm sometime because we had so many. But yeah, we had two antennas. Actually, we had two of those 30-foot dishes. You just can't see the other one in this picture.
Okay. That's so neat. And isn't that crazy that I found that, like, all this today?
Yeah.
And this right here, you said there's a bigger one that you have. I don't know. Would you want to hold it and point out? Well, it's actually really hard to see the little dots, but this map is showing all the communication satellite or communication centers, and MILA is right here. And I just thought that was crazy. I was like, I found a map with